Hello everybody, this is Odd Job Entertainment bringing you another video. And SEO, or Search Engine Optimization, is forming your content, product, or company in such a way that you appear sooner in search results. Avenger 1 recently did a video on master modes, and everyone is talking about it, so now, of course, so am I. Weird how that works out, right? If you want the short version, I think Avenger is right in some ways, and wrong in many others. If that's not very helpful, it's because this is a very complicated subject. Let's start with the basics. I've been doing quite a bit of Arena Commander as of late and trying to collect my thoughts here. I'm abysmal, as likely most people watching this are. My suspicion is that most players do not immerse themselves in PvP all that often, if at all. And that's unfortunate because Master Modes revolves largely around the combat and navigation capabilities of all of our ships. In an effort to get a more objective look at the different archetypes, I loaded into Winter Circle to compare all of them in atmosphere. Starting at the smallest, we've got the Snub Fighter. In the limited test of Arena Commander, that is the Merlin. This is the only ship I did not get much footage of in Winter Circle because I felt it needed an environment to really stretch its legs at top speed. Assuming, of course, that I'm talented enough to do so, which I guess we'll see. Here on Miner's Lament, it has a top speed of 280 meters per second, regardless of what mode you are in. And that's our first surprise, actually. This would seem to suggest that snubs do not benefit with a higher top speed in nav mode. This is particularly concerning because some of the racing ships are classified as snubs currently, like the Mirai Fury LX. Does this mean that snubs are going to be a separate category and the Merlin just isn't a good racer anymore? Without more information, there's a lot to be concerned about as it pertains to racing. Now, I am not a racer by any means, as you can probably tell from the footage. But I feel like if I gave this more than just a couple hours, I'd probably be getting clean laps. Racing is the first area, though, where I feel that Master Modes is a bit of a letdown. Let's compare my footage to that of Splen. Now, Splen actually is a racer, and a fairly talented one at that. Here they are flying the same ship, same course, but not in Master Modes. Characteristic of top-end racers in Star Citizen at the moment, you can tell that Splen is positioning their main thruster counter to their vector so that when they need that boost toward the space gate, they can get their vector indicator where it needs to be. Most of the time, the ship is entirely off-axis and we're looking way off to the side. This is someone who knows the course and has spent considerable time mastering it. Now, comparing it to my footage, which do you prefer to see? I think this comparison is pretty obvious. Racing looks a lot more fun with the higher speeds of our older flight model. The other major thing that sticks out to me is the obvious separation of skill between my own flying and that of Splen. In Master Modes, I feel like with a bit more time, I'd get the hang of it and pull off some decent times. My problem is, I shouldn't. I'm not a racer, and I have no dedicated interest to racing in Star Citizen, so I don't think my time should ever get to a point where they are comparable to that of actual racers. And racing is the pinnacle of flying skill, at least it should be. It's not like combat where everyone will probably get a taste of it. Racing is pursuing spaceflight simply for the thrill, so it should be thrilling. You should be blacking out in turns, barely able to stay conscious. You should have to dedicate hours and hours to get adequate at racing, let alone good. So by virtue of what racing is, there should be an extremely high skill ceiling, and frankly, players like me need not apply. We also need to take a look at the racers in the game. The Mirai Fury LX, for instance, has no guns. It's dedicated to one thing, going fast and tight in the turns. So why? Why would the speed of such a craft ever be limited to a few meters per second faster than a standard fighter? And hey, in the interest of that comparison, as well as to the other archetypes being considered, I made this graphic to show SCM speeds of each ship next to their top speed in nav mode. The nav mode speeds are not really a surprise. They're by and large what we are already used to. If we take a look, though, through these numbers, we can start to see how the different archetypes affect each ship. The Buccaneer, for instance, has a higher SCM speed than all but one of the ships in this list. It also has the highest nav mode top speed at 1400 meters per second. This makes sense because the Buccaneer is our first interceptor, so its primary role is to chase down other ships and bring them to a stop. Compared to the speed of the Hammerhead, it's pretty easy to do traffic stops in a Buccaneer. But if your Quarry is in a fighter, it's going to be a bit harder as the top speeds are not so dramatically different between you in either mode. And we can see similar breakdowns with the other classes of ships. The big boys are slower across both metrics. Things again are interesting when you look at the Merlin. What used to be a very popular racing ship has nothing on the other archetypes when it comes to true top speed. So racing is a pain point for master modes. What about combat? Well, this is one area where I do agree with part of what Avenger 1 said. It doesn't fix jousting. I loaded into match after match of Arena Commander, and each time I was dealing with very jousty opponents. So that is and will continue to be a problem in Star Citizen. Master Modes, as of yet, does not fix that. Against PvE targets, I think Master Modes feels pretty good. I'm personally doing better in these matches and finding it easier to maintain control. And that's a big focus of Master Modes after all, is to make things easier to pick up. So I do think it does that part very well. One thing that is a personal point of complaint for me is that I feel that the UI is very easy to lose on screen. I'm not sure why this is, but maybe it's to do with how thin some of these lines get. I just feel like I lose track of my reticle, and that never happened with the old UI. Speaking of UI though, that's another big issue with Master Modes currently. What we have access to now is not the whole story. As we saw in the most recent Inside Star Citizen that covered Master Modes, we're supposed to have precision mode for targeting. Not having access to it currently makes testing Master Modes for feedback limited in how effective it can be, like giving a food review before the food gets to your table. Another major influence to how effective this is going to be is ship armor. The major defensive trade-off with nav mode is that your shields go down, but depending on the ship you're flying, that may or may not be a death sentence. In something like a Terrapin, no worries, right? But in a teeny tiny Gladius, if someone does get the drop on you, that could be very dangerous. So again, without armor in the game, how do we know what ships are actually going to feel like? These missing elements have a huge impact on Master Modes, and with them still not in the game, we're really just grasping at straws to make educated guess on what we do or don't like. I do think that Master Modes gets a lot right, however, and making some connections to some of, as of yet, not implemented gameplay, I do see distinct advantages over the previous flight model. And this is the major area where I disagree with Avenger 1. The primary question is this: does the old flight model have more room to grow and diversify than Master Modes? I think the answer is a hard no. Master Modes does give significantly more room to adjust, tune, and characterize the many ships we have in game. Right now, it does feel very limiting, and I think the skill ceiling is a lot closer than before. But I don't think we should be throwing the baby out with the bathwater here. There are a lot of benefits to Master Modes. Top of the list, yes, is ease of use. DCS is a great game, but I don't play it. Compared to other AAA titles and the like, relatively few people do play it. The high barrier to entry required by the game is a big turnoff to a lot of people. And to be honest, does Star Citizen currently have that issue as well? Absolutely. I've introduced many of my friends during free fly events, only for most of them to not pick it up later. This game is unforgiving and tough for new players to get into, and if we're really going to have that living, breathing universe, we want lots of people to interact with. Currently, we have a limited selection of ships to pick through that represent a slice of what Master Modes has to offer. My general impressions about the flyability of these ships is that they're pretty good in their respective speeds. It was pretty easy to keep control of the ship and do some complex maneuvers, things I wouldn't usually have the confidence to do. At these much more limited speeds, the ships are very easy to control. And I like all of that. I think Master Modes are a much easier to sell to friends that don't jump on because of the current difficulty. Another major thing that I feel like A1 is missing in his commentary is that all of the values we've seen so far are going to change. Without a doubt in my mind, the base values for these archetypes are going to be pushed and pulled constantly to get ships where they need to be. Every light fighter is not going to top out at 220 meters per second. There's going to be some adjustment. How much they'll change and to what values is really just a wait and see. We don't and can't know until we actually have it in the verse and see how the chips fall with all the other ships included in the test. The final thing I think A1 misses out on is that most players cannot dedicate the amount of time he has to do PvP combat. He represents a community of the top 1% of players. If all the balancing decisions are made for that demographic, you get a game that 99% of players will not do well in. That's not good business, and it's not that fun overall. I mean, Avenger, you do this full time, right? Most of us have other jobs, hobbies, and school. There's no way to dedicate the same amount of time to refine my skills to your level. Heaven forbid I ever take a break and lose that sharply honed edge. A game for you is just not a game for everyone else. At the same time, I do think that there is still time and the expectation for adjustments to be made to raise the skill ceiling. Master Modes lowers the barrier to entry, and that's great. I do think more can be done to keep skill relevant and allow the better PvP players a way to still shine. And CIG has also recognized this and said that it's something they're looking into. Now I want to move away from talking about A1 and touch on some things that I look forward to with Master Modes. First is stealth. If ships are going to be in nav mode by default with their shield lowered as they zip from place to place, that gives a huge advantage and purpose to the stealth ships that right now are extremely underwhelming. Without the shield being up, a Saber stands a much better chance of being able to sneak in and lay down some damage on targets. So stealth is going to be much more useful under Master Modes. The other thing that I want to point out is that my beloved Scorpius could have its wings closed in nav mode. This would make it so that switching to SCM mode opens the wings and puts the S-foils into attack formation, just like in Star Wars.
Lock S-foils in attack positions.
So long as each ship is getting updated to Master Modes, I hope they've thought of this. It's a minor thing, but a big missed opportunity if they don't do that. Overall, I've enjoyed my time so far in Master Modes, and while it does get stale with a limited number of ships currently, it's important to remember that we still haven't even seen the system work. We don't have all the ships or the environments to do proper testing, and I think we'll see significant shakeups to Master Modes in the coming months once those are actually in place. For now, I think the best course of action is to stay the course and get ready to make big adjustments when 3.23 is actually in our hands. But what do you guys think? Let me know with a comment down below. Other than that, like, share, comment, subscribe. Let's have a conversation. Let's see what people are feeling about Master Modes. Until next time, though, this is Odd Job Entertainment, signing off.